don't know what I want to do, but I'm sure I'll figure it out. And by the time I got into high school and I started to have to pick GCSEs, A-levels, I kind of saw computer science as a viable option because I think a teacher told me you can make robots, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like something I want to do. And when I was doing that, a friend showed me Game Maker, which is a type of game engine like Unity or Unreal, and I thought, yep, that's it. This is what I want to do like all the time. I want to make games. And saying that, I didn't do much of it. I made like one platform, and I was like, yes, this is it. I've made it. And then I gave up and didn't touch games for like a good year or two. But I think when I was doing the A-levels, we had a project, and it was to just do something, make a cool project, and everyone else was doing like stuff with Python and boring stuff. Python's great, no diss to it, but no one was making a game, and I was like, I can make a game, so I'm going to do that. So using Unity, I made a Tetris project for my A-level final, like A-level submission, I guess, for that, and it did fine. It wasn't the best project in the world. It was like my first proper like game I made. I used a tutorial for all of it, and it did fine. It got me the grade I needed. Sorry. But when I was looking at the end of A-levels, I had to start thinking about what I wanted to do next, and it was a decision between doing an apprenticeship and going to university. And if you couldn't guess, I did choose university in the end, but that wasn't really the first option I was going for. An apprenticeship to me seemed better because educational settings for me aren't really my type of thing, and I'll get a bit more into that. So I thought an apprenticeship would be fun, and I spoke to the school's career advisor, and they said to me, okay, apprenticeships are fine, but you won't get much money from it, so what will you do? And I thought, that's a good point. And then they showed me there's actually a lot of like computer science courses I could do that had games related to them. So I was like, okay, yep, that's it. I'll go to university and I will study computer science and do games because that seems like the best thing for me to do. And other things that wanted me to get into games was games that I played. Like if you've played Stardew Valley, it's made by one person. I think when I played that, I was like, yep, if one person can do that, I also want to do that. And it's also like one of my favorite games as well. It's just great, and everything about it just inspires me to do more game development. Like it's definitely a plan at some point to do a Stardew Valley-like game because it's really fun, relaxing, and chill, which is the type of games I like to play. So what do I like about making games as well? Well, firstly, games are cool. Like there's no doubt about it. Games are fun. There's all different types of them. You can do a lot with them, and making games is fun. Playing them is fun. I've got a list here of my like Notion. You can't really see it, so I'll get it up in a second of like all different games ideas I have, because that's one of the things I enjoy most about making games is coming up with the ideas and like prototyping mechanics, because it just lets me have some creative release, I suppose. Like usually when I'm walking to work in the morning, I'll go, I could make a game based on a mechanic about this, and I'll write it down. Most likely I'll never touch it, but at least it's there for the bank, so at some point if I want to, I can. And I love to play around with AI. I did my dissertation in my final year all around AI in the wider world and in games, and it was one of the things that was like, yeah, this is something I want to do more of, which, again, related to my role now, is something I work a lot with AI, and there's a lot you can do with it, and it's a really interesting thing to read more into. And I thought, just to give you some random facts about me, currently, I'm learning Spanish and Danish through Duolingo, and I've been doing that for 2 years strong. I'm on like a 800-plus streak, so I'm quite proud of that. It's my best achievement to date. I'm trying to learn the piano. It's a really hard instrument to learn, so have fun with that, especially when you've got a small like MIDI keyboard. It's just not working very well, but I try. My favorite game is probably Stardew Valley, like I said, and Animal Crossing New Horizons, both similar type games, just super relaxing and chill. And I think Animal Crossing probably got me through the year of COVID, just being able to play that with friends and at home. If you like Warhammer 40k, I played Tau and Kill Team, just in case anyone was interested, and they're great. I don't like the slander that Tau gets, they're amazing. And apparently, according to my mom from this message you can see, when I finished the course, she sent me a message saying, you're an official gamer, to which my phone wanted to suggest no. Which I don't know why, but I was like, yeah, that probably makes sense for an answer I'd give to my mom. So let's talk a bit about my time at Confetti. I took the 3-year course, and if I can say that was right for me, I would say it was, just because I learned quite a lot. But I'll be honest with you, after the first term in the first year, I was quite close to dropping out. I was making jokes about it to friends, and I was starting to think, these jokes are becoming a bit more like I'm actually considering it. So I had to chat with one of the personal tutor at the time, and we had to sit down, and I think we spoke for 5 minutes about why I wanted to drop out. And then for the rest of the hour, we chatted about making games, making board games, and then that's when I realized, okay, yeah, I'll stick around. I wanted to drop out because when I was in school, making games was like, that was the only thing I did and no one else did, so I felt quite good about myself. But then when I started doing it with other people, it was kind of a thing you might go through yourself now or might be aware of. It's like imposter syndrome. You see other people doing something and you're like, they're doing it better than me. I'm never going to get to that level. What am I going to do? And when I was going through that, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. Educational settings aren't really for me. But I decided to stick with it for the 3 years, and I ended up in a pretty good position, I'd say. And I made a lot of great friends along the way, met some really cool people, had some great opportunities like Industry Week, for example. So I am glad that I stuck with it, and I had a great time here when I was studying and making projects. So a mindset I have when I come to game dev is I always like to learn something new. And this idea also occurred to me when I was at uni too. So I thought I'd quickly try to summarize what I did each year and like a new thing I learned each year too. So in the first year, that was the first time I ever tried out Unreal. Unreal's great, I love it. You can make really quick prototypes with it using Blueprint. You can do a lot with it. You can use the Niagara system to make some beautiful effects, which I don't think was out at the time when I started, which is kind of weird to say, but you can do a lot with it. Unreal's great. And for the first year, the project was to take a game that we like and enhance it further. So I took Super Hot, which is a fantastic game, and I always thought the game has no verticality, like you don't jump or anything, you just walk in a straight path. So I was like, well, I'll take Super Hot, add some parkour, add some jumping, and we'll see what we get. And there's also wall running. You can see it kind of in that GIF there, just a little bit of the wall running. It was a really, really fun game to make. It's one of my favorite projects. And then in the second year, so I should have planned this one a bit more. The second year was COVID year, when we went home and we stayed at home for a year, which was a hard one. And for that project, it was a group-based project, which, again, even harder when you're all having to do it online. But we got it. We got something quite good for it, I believe. So doing a team-based project is great. I always recommend doing them where you can. I was lucky in the fact that I got to do it with my friends, which does make it easier because it means everyone kind of has a personal understanding of what you all want. And we decided to go for a game like Silent Hill PT, a game I've not played, but we thought a cool psychological horror type of game would be really nice to make. And the idea is you're in a house, and you're going through the hall or the corridor, and you keep going through a door and ending up at the same spot where you started. And we kind of kept adding things would change as you played. So maybe the lights would go out where you get to, or you see a creepy face, and you're like, what's this? Or the bathroom door's unlocked. And you keep going and going until you get to the end, and boom, scary monsters there, game's over. But the project was great. I learned more about working in a team, managing responsibilities, giving people roles to do. And one of the important tools we learned with it as well was version control and source control, if you use that. If you don't use any of that, please learn it and use it all the time for your game project. It's the most valuable tool you'll probably have, because if you have an issue and you go, oh, I've broken everything, okay, we'll just go to the previous version of the build we have, and we'll carry on. And it was a really, really fun project to make. It did quite well. I think Yvem was the one who was looking after that. I'd say he liked it probably. And we named it a really great name. Naming games is one of my biggest skills. We called it Corridor Simulator, because you're walking through a corridor and it's a simulation. So yeah, Corridor Sim, great game, great name, and it's one of the best projects I've worked on in uni just because of the team-based element to it. Third year was an interesting one. Third year is when you've got like more bigger projects to take part in, and it's more, you've got a lot of creative freedom of what you do. So for the third year, we had to make a short game demo. So I was like, I'm going to make a game based on Hitman, because I've been playing that quite a lot. I was like, we're going to make a Hitman game. But I wanted to make it more complex. So I was like, we're going to make a Hitman game, but the target you have to kill has all random traits which change how you play each time. And I was like, okay, we can do that. Or we could do all that and do it in C++ and Unreal, because that's going to be a great skill to learn. So I did the whole year learning how to make Hitman in Unreal with C++, using metahumans, which had also just come out. And I was like, this is going to be a fantastic idea. And spoiler alert, it was not. Scope creep came in. Scope creep's the enemy of game design. I had way too much I wanted to do and not enough time. My laptop could only handle about 2 metahumans at a time. And for a Hitman type game, you're going to want a room full of NPCs to walk around, disguise yourself, look for the target. But the main game idea was there. Like, there was an enemy. He had random traits. You could make him so he smells, so he had particles that followed him around, or he had extra guards around him because he was fearful, or less guards, or he was armed, and it worked. The game was something. I wouldn't say it was a great game. It's not on my portfolio yet, just because one of the things I'm going to be talking about this is when you put stuff on a portfolio, you should try and do work you're proud of and you're happy to share. And right now, yeah, this game is not ready to be shared. But learning C++ was great, and I'm pretty sure that's one of the things that like got me to pass really that year, because I learned a whole skill on my own without any help. And it was great that I could put it on my CV as well, because when you're looking for a programming or design role, knowing C++, big bonus to you if you can do that in the games industry. And there's a lot of resources online to teach yourself it. It's just, you have to make sure there's different ways of learning it, and I'll get onto that in a bit. And finally, with Confetti, there's opportunities which I took part in. So for my 3 years, I was a course rep, which helped out a lot with my confidence. Like I remember the first year, we kind of had like a course rep vote, and standing up in front of like a room of like 30 people, I was like, hello, I'm Saul. And it was like, it was a very stressful environment, didn't like it. I remember looking around going, oh, this is awful. But then, so I became a course rep, and me and my friend were course reps for that year, and it was a lot more fun than I thought it was gonna be. I got to meet more of the students and hear from them more, make a few more friends. I got to go to quite a few meetings, talk to tutors, and just talk about the issues that was going on, try to make the course better for everyone. And it helped out a lot. It's a good thing I've been able to put on my CV as well and be like, oh, I did this. I was a course rep for 3 years. I got to manage stuff. And when I was doing that, we also set up a Discord for everyone in the second year, which had the games course, games art course. And that was the first like official Confetti Discord, I think. I think I had 100-ish people, which we were the mods for, and it was great. I don't think it's around anymore, and I think everyone's got their own Discords now, because we realized it just works better when it's a bit more organized like that. But the Discord was a really good place that we had, and we could use it to share work with each other, and it was a lot of fun. There's also game jams that go on as well, inside of Confetti and outside. I think there was the Women in Games Jam this year, and there was definitely one last year. And if you haven't taken part in a game jam, do it. Don't do it all the time, because sometimes they're like 24 hours, which is encouraging crunch that isn't the best behavior to do it. But game jam's fun, especially if you do it in a team. Like I said, team-based projects are great. You get to work with people, you get to learn new skills. Because you could be a programmer now, and you do a game jam, you go, I want to try and do some art for once and just see how it goes. And game jams are a great idea just to get like random ideas out of your head as well, according to the theme. Indie dev and YouTube. So for a few years now, around like 3, I believe, I'm running a small indie dev channel called Games by Saul, which is a really original name, I know, but it's too late to change it, so I'm stuck with it for who knows how long. I remember in my first year, we did like a business plan, and we had to come up with a company name, and I went, I'm going to be called Games by Saul. I remember the look Andrew gave me was just the look of, oh, you couldn't come up with anything better than that? I was like, yep, no, I'm going to go with it. I used it before, it's fine. Yeah, I'm stuck with that name now. It's going to just be there forever. But the channel, I used it as a way to document my growth as a game developer. I used to call it like a game dev diary almost, because I wanted to see where I started and where I was going. And you'll be able to see some things here. So the 2019 is a platform I made in Unity. It's a simple 2D platformer. It was okay. It had like 3 levels, different mechanics. It was almost like a rage game. Like one of the levels was impossible to do, basically. But now, 2022, I'm working on a multiplayer game using Unity where you have 4 friends in a chaotic co-op environment, almost like Gang Beasts and Overcooked thrown together and said, I want magic. It's still in early days of production, but like that's, to me, I can look back and go, I started with a pixel platformer that was rubbish, and I'm now making a multiplayer 3D game, which I'm pretty proud of right now. Having a YouTube channel is really good, I'd say. There's a lot of things that go into that. You have to, a lot of time that you need to use for like making devlogs is really complicated, and it can take a lot of time depending on how you do them. You might not get seen by anyone. Like I think, this isn't me bragging at all, obviously, but I think I've got around 1,000 subscribers, but I still only get sometimes 100 views, sometimes way less. That's just the way it works. But it's been a really good tool for me to use. Like a lot of interviews I've had, the YouTube channel has come up. I've met a lot of great developers online because of it. There's a whole Discord of game dev YouTubers, which I'm part of, which has just been really good to see how other people do things, how they make their projects, get inspiration for projects as well. It's a really useful tool to have. And sharing yourself online and your work can honestly do a lot for you. Just so, it's a thing of, it's not like what you know, it's who you know, which is kind of true for a game dev. Like if you can show that you know cool stuff, that's great. But if you can make connections with people, they'll go, oh, we've seen this person. They've made some really cool projects that we think they could be right for our project. Let's talk to them a bit. And that's sometimes how it works and how people get jobs. There was a guy on Twitter who was making a game called like Go Mecha Ball. It was a really nice procedurally animated game. It looked beautiful. And I remember when he started making it, it was just prototypes. And he got a job working for like the company behind Ori and the Blind Forest, I think the name is. And he was working for them for a while. And then his game took off and he left there and he's carrying to work on his own game now, because that's just how it goes sometimes. But you can see he didn't apply for that job. He got reached out to because he shared himself and he made some cool projects. But like I said, yeah, the channel's come up a lot in interviews, and it's good because I get questions about like, what am I working on? Sometimes they just say they like what I'm like they like the channel, which is really cool. And like talking about the channel, when I was in school, I think I had that thing of, I want to be a YouTuber in the future, play games, it'll be really cool. It wasn't. And talking about that with people was really hard because I didn't want to tell people I had a channel because I didn't want to like make myself vulnerable, I guess, to like people making fun of me, which did happen because, you know, I was just a high-pitched boy making gaming videos on Minecraft, and everyone was like, that's really funny because you sound funny. I was like, yep, that channel's gone. But Games by Saul, like the channel itself, is something I'm really quite proud to talk about with people. I'm still getting used to talking about it with people, like especially in work. People ask me about it. Or there's someone who sits next to me who I see watching devlogs every now and then, and like I looked over once and I was like, that's me. I could see my face, and he started watching it, and he just turned around and went, like, is that you? And I was like, yep, that's me. And then it got to more and more people going, I didn't know you did this. I was like, yep, I do. And I felt really awkward, but it's great. Like it's a conversation starter for one, but it's a really interesting thing to talk about with people. And I've got a question as well for everyone who's listening. Like, if you do personal work, do you share it? Because if you don't, please try and share it. It doesn't have to be like you're making a prototype or a game. It's anything that you work on, share it. You'll meet people who are interested. You'll get people who are interested in you. It's a really good way to make connections as well. You might get criticism sometimes. That's social media, and it does happen. Some criticism is great, it's constructive. It gives you ideas for what you want to do. Some criticism is just people being dicks, basically. So you just have to pick and choose what criticism is going to be good for you and what's not, and use what's right. And I've also put some that you should consume devlogs on YouTube, and I've put some of my favorite developers on YouTube there. This is just a few, I've got loads. But these are my 4 favorites because they all kind of give that chill style. I'm hoping maybe you've seen some of them. If you haven't, watch them, I highly recommend. But the more devlogs you watch, the more inspiration you can get, and like the more, I guess, like the passion for game dev kind of comes. That's how I see it. Like, to me, game dev's not just like a hobby or something I do for work. It's like a passion of mine. Like, I do it in my free time. I do it for work. Like, and I don't really get sick of it. Obviously, everyone goes through burnout every now and then. But when you're passionate about something, it's really easy to work about. And I just love talking about it with people. So being able to watch cool videos that people are making on their games, to me, if I'm having food, I'll just try and find a devlog, throw it on, watch stuff in the background while I'm working. I just always tend to surround myself with devlogs and game development in its own. I mean, talking about devlogs as well, for my dissertation, there's a channel called Code Bullet where he takes AI and he makes it just do incredible things like playing Jump King, doing Tetris, playing Donkey Kong, or just learning how to walk. And I used his videos in my dissertation to talk about how AI can be used for things. And I was just saying, you can have AI that does like really cool things in medicine or in the Justice Assistant, or you can have AI that can cheat at Tetris and annoy a lot of people. There's a whole spectrum to what AI can do. And I thought now would be a good chance to just talk about a few things that I've learned. And one of the things I really want to talk about with this talk is, this is my own experience. It's never really the same for 2 people, so take everything I say with like a grain of salt, I guess, because it might not work for you, but it might. It's hard to say it will or not. Asking questions is one of the things I learned is most important. I do it all the time. I think I annoyed pretty much all my tutors by asking them questions about like the most mundane things that didn't need to be asked, but it's almost like I just have to ask the question because I want to make sure I'm doing it as correctly as possible. And I do it now all the time. And the thing is, you shouldn't be worried about annoying people because at the end of the day, especially in a working environment, they would rather you ask a question and know you're doing the right thing than you're just going to annoy them. And then you're just sitting there doing nothing because you don't know what to do. Like I remember one of the programmers I was talking to when I first started, I had to ask him a question. I said, hey, sorry to message you, but I've got a question. And he was like, don't say sorry. You know, I'd rather you just ask me, we'll get on with it, rather than you sit there, twiddle your thumbs, not having a clue what to do, which has stuck with me. I still apologize when I send messages to people sometimes, but usually I'm more demanding with my questions. I'm like, I don't even say, hey, I'm just like, I've got a question for you. I just show up their desk, just like, hello, can I ask you a question, please? And usually it works. And I get questions too, and I usually tell people to leave me alone, because why would I want to answer your questions? You need to answer mine. It doesn't work both ways. Personal projects. Like I said before, put yourself out there. If you're working on something exciting, share it with everyone. If you're working on something that's still a prototype, share it with everything. One of my friends, she's quite an amazing 3D artist, and she was working on like a grass work in progress type of thing. And she put it on Twitter, and she's like, yeah, I'll probably get like 10 likes. I think she got 1,000 likes on it, and we were like, oh. She was like, it was just a work in progress. Like, there was no materials, it just looked kind of cool. 1,000 likes in a few days, and we were like, okay, that's amazing. Like, share everything you do, like, it's great. And if you see something cool as well, it's also great to leave a comment. Like, one of the things I've learned doing YouTube is if I find a new channel, I mean, it's probably not the best thing to do, but I'll usually leave a comment on it just to, I guess, kind of say, hello, I'm here as well, I do what you do, we could talk. And it's quite nice, it leads to connections with people. Again, leaving comments and stuff to like make a connection sounds a bit weird, but it's nice. It's usually a genuine comment. It's not me just going, I love this video and I haven't seen it. I'd usually watch the video and go, oh yeah, this is really cool and I like this mechanic you did. Would it be cool if you did this as well? And give them ideas. It's a really good way to start conversation with people if you can kind of give them ideas and they give you ideas. And putting yourself out there is an important thing to do. It's scary. Talking is scary. It's hard. It's kind of like I guess I kind of adopted the mentality of fake it till you make it. So you just pretend you're confident at all times, and you will be sometimes. And public speaking for me was one of those things that terrified me, but like, I'm here now. I'm talking in front of a group of people, which I would say is public speaking. And I feel slightly nervous, as you can probably tell, and I'm moving around a lot and having drinks, but it's fun. And you get over it quite quickly, just the more you put yourself out there, I think. And doing YouTube or streaming and stuff like that is also a good way of getting yourself used to talking out loud, because when I edit stuff, I hate the sound of my own voice. I'm starting to get used to it now, but like whenever I have to listen to my voice, I'm always just like, do I really sound like that? Do I have to listen to this? Do other people want to listen to this? But every now and then I'm just like, yeah, I can just tune out my voice now and just edit it and be like, yeah, if I can watch the video, so I'm sure someone else will watch it and enjoy it as well. So let's talk about some more things that'll actually help you get into your journey, and that is portfolios and CVs, which are both super important to do, and you should make sure you've got a portfolio to share before you start applying. And they have to be clear and presentable. That's like the most important thing with them. Piece of advice I got, and I kind of mentioned it before, is you only showcase really what you're proud of and something you don't mind other people seeing. And it's one of the reasons, like I said, the Hitman game isn't on my portfolio yet. It's getting on there slowly because I'm reworking a mechanic to make it look nicer, but currently it's just a bit, do I want to show this off to people? Do I want people to see this? Not really right now. But there's a project I've made, I'm like, oh yeah, this is cool. People can see this. It goes right in the portfolio. I write up everything I can. Get a lot of GIFs for it as well. Ooh, sorry. There we go. Another thing you want to do as well is look at other portfolios and CVs and use them for inspiration. I have a link here from Sally Blake, and I can actually just get that up. Somehow, alt-tabbing is not my speciality. Okay, there we go. It's on my screen. Hopefully it can be on yours. Okay, I can show them at the end, hopefully, as well. Basically, Sally Blake, she gave a talk here a few years ago, and I went to that, and I wasn't really sure what to expect because I hadn't really heard of her before, but the talk was fantastic. She showcased like she has a lot on her website, basically, like a lot of cool different, there we go. Just ignore that. She has a lot of cool different portfolios on her website for all different roles in the industry. She's like kind of just grab some online, and I'll try and show you at the end if I can, but I can send out links or get you then to send out links to people, but I use that when making my portfolio, and it helped me so much to see how other programmers and designers had made theirs. And I can go, okay, they've done that. How could I make that slightly better or give it my own spin on it? Because the thing with portfolios and CVs is you want them to be a personal experience. Like, you want people to get to know what you're like. Like, you can kind of see my CV there. There's a picture of me. It's got a lot of different blues on it because it's my favorite color. And it's got like different things like what my hobbies. I like to cycle. I like photography. Is it something they need to see? Not necessarily, but it gets them to know what I'm like. I mean, I think on my put on my portfolio, it says something about me is I like drinking tea, because I do. And again, that has absolutely no use to anyone, but it's still a way for them to know what I'm like. The thing is as well with your portfolios, you don't want to clutter it. If you're good at 3D and programming and you don't really know which one you want to go into, don't combine them into one portfolio, make two, or pick one and stick to it. Because if you kind of have like a 3D and programming portfolio, you might get alarm bells ringing because they go, what does this person want to do? Like if they apply for a 3D role, are they just doing that to get a job with me? And then they'll go into programming and then we've just lost a 3D artist we've trained. Maybe we won't go for them. I kind of cheated. I did a programming and design role because those two roles can kind of intertwine a bit into, spoiler alert, tech designer. So it's okay. It's fine. I was allowed to do that, I guess, and it helped me to get the role I wanted. But programming and design is one that can kind of blend into each other if you're careful with it. Like if you have like all character design sheets and all like backstories, that might not lend itself too well into having programming stuff on there as well. But it just depends on how you do it. There's different ways. There's all different types of portfolios. You should share your portfolio out with people too. You can get some great feedback. And just because you get feedback doesn't mean you need to act on it. When I did mine, I had a massive Notion like task list of all different feedback I got. And I did a lot of it, but then some of it I was like, it doesn't really fit what I want from a portfolio, so I'm going to ignore that and stick with what I got. And I'm quite happy with my portfolio. Again, I'll try and show it at the end if I can. But if you could see the QR code, which is kind of blocked off by me, you could scan that and open my portfolio. But if you type in Games by Saul on the internet, you will genuinely find everything that I've got online, which is kind of scary to say out loud now because there's just everything about me. But Games by Saul on anything and you'll find what you need. CVs, these are hard to do, like really hard to do. Like they're not that fun to make, but I use a template for mine because Maggie or Magda, she was a few years above me. I had a few chats with her and she suggested use a template for like a Photoshop template, make it your own, make it different, and you'll be fine because I think that's what she did. And yeah, that's my portfolio. CV. I took a template online, got rid of a lot of it because I didn't like it, and made it my own, and it works. But there's all different things you can do for a CV. Someone I work with, I think did their CV based on like a D&D character sheet, and they never got to use it, but they said it looked really cool, and I saw it once, and it did look great. But so there's a lot you can do, especially because we're in a creative industry. You don't have to have like a boring, here's just a white piece of paper with all the text on. You can make it different. Throw a picture of yourself on. Let them know who you are. Get some nice icons on there. You can't really see them, but there are icons on there. In one section of mine, I talk about how I am absolutely on board for relocating, whether it's in the UK or abroad, just because it's important to know, because you might apply for somewhere abroad and they're like, well, do you want to come here? Because we only want people who will relocate. And save them that time. You want to kind of save recruiters as much time as you can by having the information there. I was like, yep, absolutely. And I remember I chatted to the employability team here at NTU and Confetti, and they were like, yeah, that's quite a funny comment to have there. And I was like, cool. That's definitely what I was going for funny, but yeah. And it works for me, and I like having it on there because it kind of gives people a little bit of a, yeah, I'm literally willing to move if you will give me a job, not because I'm desperate, but because I'm happy to move around and see different places. Experience on CVs is a hard one, especially when you're applying to like a games industry, because there's things you do need to include and don't. Like I heard some people tell me you should include everything, and some of people tell me don't do that. The kind of thing I learned with CVs is it should kind of all be on one page if you can, like have everything on one page, try not to go over if you can help it. And you want experience on it that's similar to a portfolio you're happy to share and is relevant. Like I worked at McDonald's for like 3 years. That's not on my CV. What is on my CV is the fact I'm a technical designer at Red Kite, and some of the projects I did at Confetti, like the corridor sim or the first year project I did, because I have a lot to talk about with them. I could have put the Hitman project on, but other than saying I overscoped way too much and I learned myself some Unreal C++, there's not really too much I can talk about it with that. Having skills on your CV is really important as well. You can kind of see there's technical and key skills. Technical skills are like software, different workflow practices, and key skills are things like communication, teamwork, and both really important to have on there. You want to be able to tell people what you're good at and what you're not. And with CVs comes the even more boring thing, which most places don't ask for, but some do, which is cover letters. Cover letters are a pain to make, and they're hard to give advice about because, like I said, some ask for them, some don't. Some give you the option. If they give you the option, I'd genuinely just say just make one. The best thing that I did for me that worked was I made a template. I used something similar to this. I used a template similar to the CV, so it kind of all fit together, and I was like, yep, cover letter, let's make a standard one, and I'll change it where I can. Which is actually opposite to advice I got given by employability, like you need to remake it each time. I was like, I refuse to do that because this is really boring, I don't want to. With a cover letter, you kind of want to put a date on it, just so they know it's like recent. You want to like talk about the company specifically that you're applying to, why you want to work for them, what's interested you about the role. You kind of want to suck up a little bit and be like, oh, I really love your studio. You do great games that I enjoy playing, and the studio culture seems great. I want to work with you. Just so they can see that you're actually interested and have read more about what they do in the role, and you're not just sending out like thousands of applications to places you haven't read into. When you make a template of a cover letter, if you do that, it's really important to read over it. I had an instance where I sent a cover letter to 2 studios months apart with the same date because I didn't check it, and yeah, that could have been really bad. If I checked the thing that I hadn't sent like 2 studios, like Studio A and Studio B, I wouldn't like, hey, Studio A, I really want to work for you, send a cover letter, and then say Studio B, hey, Studio A again, I want to work for you, and it's like a different studio completely, and like, this isn't meant for me, he's sending out loads of applications. That bit I got rid of, but the dates, yeah, that still didn't look very good, and I remember seeing it and going, oh no, and I don't think I ever heard back from them either, but you know, cover letters don't always help. They're good to have if you can make them. It just depends on if they ask for one and if you should do one or not. Some places will, some places won't. But just make sure you read over everything and then reread it again and make sure it looks as good as you can. I also found out that if you follow other developers online, particularly ones in jobs in the industry, either on LinkedIn or Twitter, most of the time you'll get some useful advice off them. One piece of advice I got, like I said before, was keep your CV on one page. Did that, but the person who gave that also mentioned about making your CV personal, and your cover letter is really personal too. Like, I remember when I was talking to employability for the law team, I don't know why I was with them, but for some reason I got given the law employability, and they're like, yeah, your cover letter looks too personal, because I say like, hi, hello, like you want to have like a dear, like whoever. I was like, I don't really want that. And then I had the employability with the games, for the games course, and they're like, yeah, that looks great. You got a really personal cover letter. You're saying, hi, how are you, kind of thing, which looks nice. It shows a bit of who you are, because you kind of want to give that, you know, you want to show off that you're friendly and chatty, and that's a good way of doing it. It's kind of about a balance of making it informal and formal at the same time. You don't want it to be like using slang and stuff, but you want it to be an accurate representation of you. And if you're making personal projects, a good idea is if you have a company that you really like and you like their art style or the games they make, maybe take a bit of inspiration from them and start to make stuff in their style and showcase that, so you can kind of say, oh, I really want to work for this company. They use this specific art style. I'm going to copy that myself and show it to people and be like, yep, I can do that. I know your games. I can recreate it. If they do cool mechanics that you really like, if there's a game that you go, yeah, the mechanic in this game is like perfect, I'm going to recreate that, do it. Try not to break any copyright rules if there are, like have a little read into it. Like probably if you like copy a mechanic word like exactly, you probably can't sell it or distribute it. I imagine there's all different things. Copyright is a whole other beast that you need to read into, but just be careful. Like research the games and make stuff that you want to work on at some point, and you'll be more likely to work for those kind of companies. Networking, this is super important. You've got industry weeks, LinkedIn, social media, and grads and games, which I'm hoping you've heard of, but if not, I'll give a little bit of a discussion about them. Industry weeks, like this thing we're in right now, it's a great opportunity to network and meet developers. You can ask questions at Q&A, which I hope you do, because that's kind of the main thing of this talk, is to ask questions. They might give some contact info for LinkedIn where you can ask them more questions later on, but respectfully. There's a way to ask questions and a way to not ask questions. Just be respectful with how you ask them and try not to annoy people with, like, if they don't reply to you straight away, because people are busy. They can't always answer your questions straight away. I think I've tried my best to express how important it is to ask questions. I just I always do it, and I always think it's worked out well, just to ask as much as you can, get as much info so you're as prepared as possible. And for my first industry week, I made business cards. And unless you've got a business to share, don't make business cards. It's a real way to waste some money and have like 60 cards you have no idea what to do with. I think I gave it out to like 3 people, and it was fun. Yeah, sure, here's my business card, look how cool it is. But now I'm stuck with 60 business cards, and I don't know what to do with them. And it got a few views, like my portfolio was on it, got a few views, which was really cool to see. But again, I have all business cards. What do I do with them? But the only thing with that is in first year, Jin, who I think does esports now, he took one of my business cards and chamfered it because he bought a chamfer tool. And he was like, yeah, look at this new tool I got. And I still got it. It's falling apart, but it feels like a limited edition because it's got these nice smooth corners and all the others are square. Like this is for me. No one else gets this one. This is super interesting. That's my special business card. LinkedIn and social media, both super powerful tools. LinkedIn is a way to connect with people in a more professional manner. It's one of the first things I did when I got to university. I had no idea what LinkedIn was. And I was like, sure, I'll check it out. I joined it and I was like, oh, this is really cool. I can see developers who worked on games that I like. I'm going to connect with them. And I kept doing that. And I have a lot of connections now. And it's not a thing where you need to talk to all your connections. It's not like that type of social media. It's more social media to see what your connections are doing, find job opportunities, and just see what's going on in the industry. There are a few things with LinkedIn you need to be careful of. Like people can see if you view their profile unless you change your privacy settings, which I remember I looked at my brother's LinkedIn just because I thought it'd be funny. And then I got a message a minute later saying, oh, when did you get LinkedIn? Because I didn't realize he could see that I was stalking him. So yeah, be careful with who you look at. Check your privacy settings. But LinkedIn, like it feels like people, you see stories on there like, I saw a person, they put stories up and it's like, oh, I saw a person who was, like, he didn't have enough change for the bus. I gave him the change, and then he came for an interview, and it's like, oh, does that ever happen? But stories like that do happen. One story I've got is my girlfriend was looking for a job after she graduated, and she wanted to do working with archives, which is quite a difficult thing to get into. And she had applied to a lot of places, had interviews, but it was a bit of just a waiting game. We convinced her to get LinkedIn. She got LinkedIn. Within a week or two, she had a recruiter message her saying, hey, we're looking for an archive person to work in archives, would you be interested? And now she's got a job because she had LinkedIn for like a week or two, and apparently things like that can happen. And I have people tell me like, as soon as you get a job, you'll get all recruiters messaging you on LinkedIn because that's what they do. They want people who are already in this industry to kind of like poach. Currently that's not happened for me, but maybe one day I'll be poachable, I guess. At LinkedIn, you don't really want to use like I said before, it's not like normal social media. You don't want to use it for like life posts, like unless it's like something to do with your career. You wouldn't post like, oh, I'm going to see a film today on LinkedIn. Like that's just not really what I'd use it for. I mean, you can. I've seen people use it for that, but you might get a few weird looks and reactions. So if you on LinkedIn, share your work on there. Absolutely, you make a portfolio, slap it on LinkedIn. Be like, I made a portfolio. Check it out. You make a new game project on LinkedIn straight away. And social media, like I've been saying, it's a great place to share your work and meet people. You can meet people with similar ideas, get some feedback on your ideas, and it's a really good place. But social media is like a double-edged sword. It's draining, for one. Like, you can get addicted to it quickly. Like, I know I am. I've got all different types of social media on my phone, and it's like a thing of I'll go off, like Instagram, for example, put my phone down, pick my phone up and go back on Instagram within like seconds, and I've just realized I've done that, but I'm still doing it. I'm just scrolling. It's like you're just endlessly scrolling. Twitter's one. Twitter's a great place sometimes. You can, it's a really good way to meet people, but Twitter's also like a bit of a cesspit. It's just not always a nice environment. If you don't have to use Twitter, don't. I know a lot of people in the studio don't use Twitter just because it is a cesspit. They might use it to like check up on things, but never really use it at all. I've added focus time on my phone, so I don't just use Twitter like before I go to bed or in the morning, because I will sit in bed scrolling through it, and it's like 3 in the morning, and I've gone, oh, I've just wasted 3 hours on Twitter. Like this is not what I need to be doing today. And with social media as well, share what you can, but always be careful with what you share. Like, if there's something you wouldn't say in front of a tutor or someone on an interview, you don't always want to share it on social media, because your social media can get looked at by recruiters and stuff, and they go, this person said something that doesn't really fit in with our studio, we might avoid them. And that's not to say don't post on social media. You can post what you want, but just be careful with what you post and think about, could this have ramifications for me in the future? Maybe, okay, maybe I won't post this, or I'll post it somewhere else that doesn't get seen by recruiters. That's all on you. You need to make that judgment yourself. I've got Grads and Games here. So Grads and Games, if you don't know it, is an organization which, as it says on the tin, is basically about helping graduates get into games. And I owe a lot of where I am to them now. In December of 2022, I think, or maybe 2021 actually, they held, it was just 2021, yeah. They held a career connector event where I joined, and I was still at uni at that point, and it was a good opportunity to meet people in industry. And I did it early enough, so I was able to have 3 meetings with 3 different studios. I picked Platonic, who make Ukulele, if you know them. I picked 1010 Games, who are a bit of a new studio, who I thought, new studio, that sounds interesting, I'm going to have a chat with them. And I also picked Red Kite, which, spoiler alert, can kind of see where it all kind of led to. And it was a really good chance to have like a one-on-one with all these companies. And the one that stuck the most, obviously, was Red Kite for me. I spoke to Andy, the technical director at the time, and I remember it was a bit of a intense thing because I was like my first one. I was like, hello, I'm a graduate. And he was like, okay, what do you want? Like, how can I help you, basically? What do you want from me? And he gave me a lot of great advice, and he was basically telling me about when to apply, what to focus on. And I was telling him how at the time I was quite interested in doing a programming role. And he looked at my CV and he was like, that is I mean, I'm not bragging because he did say this. He said it's a very good CV, and it was like one of the best he'd seen at that event. So I'm giving myself a pat on the back for that. But he also said to put C++ above C# on it, and I did that because, I mean, if the technical director, which is quite a high up role, suggested I do something on the CV, I'm absolutely going to do that. But they have a lot of events going on. There's Search for a Star and Rising Star. I think Rising Star is what you can do if you're in your first and second year, and Search for a Star is what you do in your final year. It's basically a game jam. I think it's a month long. I might be wrong about that. Everyone gets a brief depending on what you do. There's programming one, there's environment art, animation, and I think there's character art as well. They might have more now, but that's just what they had when I did it. And I did the programming one. And for that, they gave you Minesweeper in Unity, and they were like, here's a broken version of Minesweeper. Can you fix it and make it better? I remember staring at it like, I don't know what to do. So I looked at Minesweeper, I was like, okay, let's see where it's broken, and I'll fix Minesweeper first. So I did that. And then I was like, okay, how can I make this stand out and more interesting? And at the time, I'd been playing a lot of golf with your friends, and you can kind of see here what I got. I got Minesweeper connected with golf. Really weird combination, but I remember it was really fun to work on. So the way it works is you do the Minesweeper part of the game. You have to make a kind of a path to the other side of the course for you using Minesweeper. And I'll be honest, before it, I'd never played Minesweeper, didn't know how the game worked. I think I played like hours of Minesweeper each day, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is great. Like like, all games should go back to Minesweeper because it's just a flawless game. It just works. Hours of fun. It's annoying. Gives you like the kind of satisfaction when you finish it. It's a really good game. And I entered it, and the project did quite well. There was a lot of amazing projects, and there was a lot of good feedback I got because the judges were people in industry. And I remember the feedback I got was super positive. It made me feel great. Like one of the ideas I had for it was, I'm going to make an online leaderboard system so people can share their scores. I had no idea how to do that. So instead of doing that, I decided, well, I can cut that out. And what I can do instead is make a seed for the map. So that way you can kind of share it with friends and be like, hey, play on the map I did and we'll see who does better. I remember one of the pieces of feedback I got was a judge saying that was a great choice to do, to cut out the thing that would have taken a load of time, make something quite simple, and it adds kind of an almost multiplayer aspect to it. Unfortunately, the project wasn't in the top 3, which is like the award ceremony requirement. I think I was 4th. I was having a look the other day at the results and I couldn't really tell, but I'm going to say I was like about 4th. And like I said, it got people in the industry to look at my project, and they gave me feedback, which was great. They also showcase jobs on their website as well on Grads and Games, so definitely check it out and see what they've got going on. Maybe there's a job for you which fits, or you can also get some advice from them as well. I think they have a Discord. If you're not in it, join it. Just connect with Grads and Games as much as you can. They're a really good organization. There's also a lot of resources online. One of the resources, which my GIF is kind of hidden, so I'll show you that at the end, is basically by a developer called Joe Hobbs, who came to Confetti, I think it was last year or the year before, and they made a thing for everyone called the Game Dev Contact List, and it's fantastic. Basically, he made a big spreadsheet, and he got a load of developers to put their contact details on, who they work for, what their role is, the seniority, where they're based, and just contact info, like I said. And it's basically a way of saying, hey, grads and students, if you want to talk to a developer about a role you're interested in, here's a really good place to find someone who's willing to talk to you. Again, it's a thing where you have to be respectful with it. They're giving you their information, so the least you can do is just be polite to them and not harass them with it as well, and give them time, because they all live busy lives. I used it quite a lot when I was looking for a design-based role and wanted to learn more about what a tech designer was, because I saw the job application for it, and I was like, but what is a tech designer? And I remember asking people what it was. I got some great advice. I learned some interesting things about making games as well through it, and it was a really good way to connect with developers that made games I'm interested in, and I'd highly recommend you check it out. Again, I'll try and show it at the end of the talk, if there is time. Let's see. So, you've done all this, you've got a CV, you've got your portfolio, so now it's time to apply. You should apply when you're ready, but don't leave it too late. Tracking your applications is a great idea. Using a recruitment company, you can if you want. There's a really good one for games that I use, and they got me quite a few opportunities, but you need to remember at the same time, game dev is super competitive. Like, when I was graduating, we were expecting a load of jobs to go up because that kind of what happened the previous year, but then I remember none. There was literally no graduate jobs going. There was 2 at Red Kite at the time, which was probably the most I'd seen for graduate-specific roles, but it's really hard to find a role that you want. And it can be hard to know when to start applying, and giving a definitive answer to that is also hard. I started applying December 2021, and I think what convinced me was, like I said, in the Career Connector, when I was talking to Andy, he said to me, there was 2 jobs going for Red Kite, graduate tech designer and graduate programmer. And he said to me, you can either apply now with the skills you've got, and I was still learning C++ at the time, so the programmer role was going to be a bit of a stretch, but he said you can apply now, see how far you get, or you can wait a few weeks, a few months, develop your skills further, but hope the roles are still available. So I was thinking on that, and I decided I'm just going to apply and see where I get. And he was like, yep, that's fine. That's perfect. It's not a bad decision. You just do what you feel comfortable doing. So I made a lot of applications. And when you make applications, it can be really easy to lose track of, have I applied to this role before? Have I applied to this company before? Have they gotten back to me? And I remember in my first industry week, someone gave advice to track it in a diary, and I was like, well, I'll make one better because I like spreadsheets. I'm going to make a whole spreadsheet where I can track who I've applied to, see what games they've worked on, if I've heard back, do I need to relocate, and just keep track of all that information. So I did. You can kind of see it there. Again, I'll show it if I can later on. But the spreadsheet was really good. There was I basically got every single game company in the UK, put their information on it, and I'd keep checking in their website. Have they got any roles I can apply to? Yep, going to apply, put it in the spreadsheet, and mark it when they've replied or not. And a lot of the time, they did not reply, which does happen. It's just a common thing. Like, they've either got too many applications and they just don't check them all, or they just filled the role. They're not actually looking for the role anymore. You need to make sure all your information is correct as well when you apply as well. You don't want to have something that's out of date. You don't want to have addresses that are wrong. You want to make sure people know who you are, where they can get you, how they contact you, and all that kind of stuff. And making the spreadsheet as well, like I said, super important. You can just keep track of everything. You don't have to lose track of where you've been applying to. And the spreadsheet I made, a few of my friends used it when they were applying to, so that just means, obviously it had some use, I hope, to them. But yeah, I would highly recommend you, even if it's just a document, just make sure you know who you've applied to. I also added in additional notes, whether or not I used a cover letter and other things they're looking for, or if it was like a speculative application, because that's just one where there's no role going for them right now, but if there is one you're interested. And I remember I applied to one of them, and I got rejected, and I didn't know that could happen to speculative, because I thought I was just kind of like, yeah, when you've got a role, just give me an email. But they were like, nope, we don't want you for this role at all. And I was like, oh, but there's no role going. Can you not just keep me on the list? They're like, nope, goodbye. So that was fine, but it happens. Rejections are something we'll talk about, and it's a big thing that's going to happen. It just does as well. It's a hard one. So there's also a thing of, should you apply for the same company twice for different roles? And it's kind of, it depends. There's nothing wrong with it, but if you apply to a 3D role and a programming role, again, like I said before, in a portfolio, it's kind of like, what do you want to do? Like, specializing is really important so people know what you're interested in. a lot of people tend to apply to QA, and QA is a fantastic role, but people apply to it because they think this is an easy way to get into the industry, which sometimes it can be, but QA there's a lot that goes into it, and if you're just doing QA, but your whole portfolio is heavily 3D based, some recruiters might go, they're doing this to get a job here, and then they're going to leave QA and we'll be without a QA person. Maybe we won't take them, and we'll take someone who seems genuinely more interested in QA. And I'm going to talk more about QA and stuff later on, but it's one of those roles that I know a few people in work personally who didn't work in games before doing QA, and they were just, so if you want to get into games, QA is a fantastic way, especially if you don't really know what you want to do, but it's a hard role as well. There's a lot that goes to it. So I was going to just share some fun statistics. According to my spreadsheet, I applied to around 30 places in the end, because a lot of the places that I wrote down on the list just didn't have any job applications. And I think I heard back from around 5. And then only 2 of them were actually offers. The rest were all rejections, or I just did not hear back. So yeah, game dev's competitive. You're not always going to hear back. It's most of the time, as you can see from those stats there, the majority was I didn't hear back or I got rejected. And it's character building. You know, you kind of learn to develop a bit of a thick skin to being rejected, because it probably will happen quite a lot. But like I said, there are recruitment companies. There's one called Aardvark Swift, which you might have heard of. Grads in Games kind of introduced them to me. I used them a bit, and they were quite useful. They actually did get me one interview. They didn't tell me they got me the interview. I just had an email saying, hey, you've got an interview with this company. And I was like, okay, I didn't apply to you, but sure, I'll go along with it. Yeah, I'll take an interview. And that interview actually did lead to a job offer, so I can say Aardvark Swift is really useful. Recruitment companies exist. Read into them, make sure they've got good credentials, good reviews, and they actually look, legit. They usually will give you some good advice. They can look through your portfolio, tell you if you're missing anything. They'll ask questions too. They want to know, like, do you have any places you want to work, any companies you're interested in, because they might have connections to them and can get you on. I mean, at the end of the day, if they get you a place, they get some money out of it, so they want to do everything they can to get you a job because it benefits them and it benefits you. So, something that when I was applying I had to debate to myself was design or programming, and it's something I was challenged with. It was a question to myself of which did I like more and what happens when you combine the two. When I first came to Confetti, I wanted to be an indie developer and be my own boss. I was like, yeah, that'll be really cool. I can have my own studio. I can put like a slide in it or something. It will look great. It'll be really fun. But then the plan changed, and I realized, yeah, I'm not ready to do that. I want to work for a company and actually like make bigger games and see how that all goes. So then indie dev became a hobby, and my priority became, I'm going to enter the industry as a programmer, as that's what I mainly do and enjoy when I work on my own games. And I thought, yeah, this is going to be it. I'm going to be a programmer in the industry, and I'm going to have great fun. But I'd only been programming for myself, and there's a difference when you program for yourself and in a group-based project or on a larger AAA project, because there's good ways to code and there's bad ways to code. I probably lean more into, I don't know really how to do the good ways to code, so I'll just do what looks right and works. I've learned as time goes on, I've spoken to other developers, you shouldn't do this or you should do that. And it kind of became apparent to me that maybe going for a programming role isn't the best thing to do. And it was more when I was starting to get interviews for programming roles, and I realized I really don't know what I'm talking about. They asked me a question, and I just kind of give a blank face, like, I've never heard of this before in my life. This probably isn't the right thing for me. And it kind of opens your eyes a bit, and you kind of go, have I picked the wrong area to specialize in? But I was kind of in the fortunate position that while working on my own games, I kind of realized, yeah, design is something I enjoy doing quite a lot. I talk to a lot of people as well about game design. It's something I do in work all the time with the other designers as well, just talk about ideas we have for games. It's something I did when I was at uni. I'd go to a cafe every now and then with a friend, and we just talk game design for hours. It's one of my favorite things to do, honestly, just talking game design with people. That's kind of why I'm doing this talk, because I want to talk about the hobby that is game design with everyone. It's just a lot of fun to me. And I was like, I could apply to doing this and see what happens, and I did. But with the programming stuff as well, when you apply, you get tech tests, which is something I'll talk a little bit more in the next slide. But tech tests were also the kind of thing that made me realize, yeah, I don't know how to do this. I remember a company in my local city sent me one just as they just wanted to see how I found it as like someone who's at university. And I remember looking at the tech test, like, I have no idea what this is asking me to do or even how to start the program. And it was like, have you done this type of programming before? I was like, nope. But he was like, okay, before you apply to programming roles, you might want to look into that. So again, that's kind of another thing which not my confidence, but made me think maybe programming isn't what I should be doing. And I realized when I was applying to designing roles and talking about it, I was much more confident and happy. Like, I'm more confident talking about something that I know than something I don't know. And when I was talking about programming in interviews, I was more or less just kind of winging it the whole time, trying to get through it, trying to make sure I didn't sound like an idiot, and just kind of making educated guesses. But when I'm talking about game design, I'm actually coming up with ideas that could work. And it's just, because that's what game design is. It's a lot of prototyping, seeing what works, what doesn't, and that's what I was doing in a lot of those design interviews. But programming skills and knowledge wasn't a waste. I mean, like I say on the last thing of this slide, what happens when you combine the two? Well, spoiler alert, you get a technical designer, which is me. Interviewing. Questions, like I say, ask questions, just keep asking questions. You want to ask about studio culture. You want to show that you have an interest in the games they're working on and the studio itself. Ask about your responsibilities. Ask more about the role. Ask how can you progress in the role as well. And questions so that you're interested and you have a passion for what you're doing and you're talking about. You're not just there because you think it's easy. You genuinely are interested in knowing more about what you're going to be doing. And one question you may not know whether to ask or not is about salary. And that's a hard question. I'll be perfectly honest. When I went for interviews, I never asked about salary just because that wasn't really my main thought process going into them. I kind of had been told when I was in school that if I work in games, I won't make a lot of money. So I was like, well, I'd rather not make a lot of money and just be happy in doing what I'm doing and live a somewhat comfortable life. So I was like, yep, I don't really need to ask about salary. When I went for my interview for Red Kite, I remember walking to the train station with another tech designer. I was like, can I ask you a question? Like, I didn't want to ask it there. And he was like, let me guess, you want to know how much you'll get paid? I was like, oh, no, I just want to know like how this thing works in the studio. He was like, oh, you don't want to know about salary? I was like, no, I'll just find that out if I accept the offer or not. Like, that can come later. But you are perfectly valid to ask it. Like, most companies don't mention it on their ads, and they may even ask you what your expectations are. And all I can really recommend is do some research, find out what other companies pay if you can, and find out what your self-worth. Like, you don't want to give yourself like nothing. Like, you're going to be you're doing them a job, and at the end of the day, you deserve to be paid. So make sure you do get paid a fair amount. And if you want to ask, do it. Just maybe don't make that your first question or your only question. You don't want to be like, hey, what's my salary? Okay, cool. Thanks for the interview and leave, because it just looks a little bit weird, because all you care about is the money, which shouldn't be what you're getting into games for. You should get into games for making games because you love making games. Interviews can be a learning opportunity and a good chance for some character building, because they can be quite scary and they may not always work out. But you should hopefully be able to learn something from every interview you do. Perhaps the person you interviewed, you mentioned something, they like seeing such and such on your portfolio, and you're like, okay, they like seeing this on my portfolio, so I'm going to include that a lot more, because if they like it, there's a good chance other people will like it too. Or they asked you a question that you didn't know the answer to. Make a note of it, read into it more, because perhaps it will come up again in a future interview, and then you know the answer to it next time. On being asked questions, you may get asked a question you don't know the answer to, and I wasn't really too sure what to do in this situation, so I asked Dave, our creative director, who's also like the design boss for Red Kite, and I said, what would you recommend someone does? And to quote him word for word, because I just thought his answer was really funny and very like him, he said, I'd rather someone admit and they gave an educated guess at the answer rather than attempt to bullshit their way through. Because yeah, someone will be able to tell straight away if you're just making stuff up on the spot. But if you say, sorry, I don't know the answer to this question, but I think it's to do with this, which is what I did for one of the programming interviews, I wasn't right, but at least I tried to guess, and it somewhat made sense, but it just wasn't there. And interviews are hard. The main things that worked for me were, like I said before, was like, fake it till you make it. Try and be confident. Pretend you're confident the whole way through. Give off that confident like energy and presence to them, and it'll be a more comfortable experience for everyone. Try and be personal as well. Like, you don't want to be like a robot and not make a connection. You want to try and make a connection to people talking to you, because then it's a better time for everyone that way. And you can write everything down that happens in an interview. More and more of them are being conducted online. Like, all of mine were online mostly until I got to the next stage. And the benefit of having an online interview is you probably will have another monitor you can put notes on, your portfolio on, or just other tabs you can have open. Do it. Interviews aren't exams. You're allowed to look at your notes. You're allowed to write things down. in my interview for Red Kite, I got asked a design question, and I was thinking about it in my head over and over, and I was just like, I can't get the thoughts across properly. So I just said, do you mind if I write stuff down? And I remember Dave kind of gave me a blank look, and he was like, obviously, like, we don't ask like our developers to not use the internet or anything. Like, write whatever you need down. Like, it'd be cruel if we didn't give you like a notebook to write something down when you're in work. Like, you need to write stuff down so you can get your ideas from your head to paper and see if it actually works out. And by doing that, it helped me answer the question a lot quicker, because I was able to say, okay, so this is the question. Let's break it down with these notes. And like, I wasn't like talking the whole way through. I was like kind of talking what I was writing and saying, but that's fine. Like, they want to see how you work out things as well. Like, that's an important part of being a developer. I mean, remember, it's a stressful environment. Interviewers are bound to be aware that it's stressful. And if you get mind fog at some points, that's fine. Just give yourself a quick breather and just say, sorry, just give me 1 second. It's going to be fine. They understand. They've been there too. They've been in interviews. I can't touch too much on tech tests just because a lot of companies have NDAs with them, but some interviews will lead to a tech or an art test where you're usually given a brief or an assignment. You have a few days, a day, a few hours maybe to complete it and show off your skills. You'll then submit it. You'll get some feedback and you'll find out if you passed or not, and you get to the next stage. And I did one programming tech test, which I did pretty well with. But when I was doing it, I wasn't super confident I was doing the right thing. So I thought, well, the questions they've given me, I could write down notes to and answers and talk about my working. And I remember when I did that, I uploaded the tech test and I uploaded a document that said, I'm tackling this question and I did this. This is the issues it presents. This is how I'm going to solve them. These are future issues I might get. Or I can't do this issue because I don't know how this works, but I kind of got around it by doing this. And I remember when I submitted that and I had the interview following that, they were a massive fan of that because it showed my working out. They want to know they're going to work for someone who knows how to work out and talk about their working out, because if you're working with someone on a project or a mechanic, you're going to be able to need to communicate what you're doing with them and vice versa. So being able to communicate how you work stuff out is really useful. And something I noticed from interviews is that they definitely asked about personal projects and skills above everything else. They asked me a lot about my own games and like YouTube and stuff and any problems I had while working on them, how I solved them. They even suggested some design ideas for them and said, oh, it'd be cool if you did this in your game, which is it's a really good way to make a conversation with the people you're talking to. And again, it kind of leads to that human interaction with them all. And it's a really nice experience when you can kind of make that connection. Because I mean, you're all making games, like you have that common connection already. Like games are great, games are fun. Let's talk about making games all the time. It's a lot. Games are cool. That's basically the main thing about it. And this sounds really cheesy, but be yourself. Let them get to know you. They want to know that they're going to be working with someone who fits the culture. They don't want to work with, this is me on interview mode and this is me in normal mode. They want to know what you're like. Obviously, be a bit more respectful and try and stay polite with them at all times, but they want to know what you're like so they know what you're like to work with. Rejections. You get lots of rejections. Like, seriously, lots. Like, I got so many rejections. And again, it's just all a bit of character development and it just builds you. You might feel a bit down on the inside, but you'll get used to it. They happen. You may get an email saying you're unsuccessful. You might just never hear back. If you don't hear back from a place, it's perfectly fine to just email after a few weeks or a month and say, hey, I applied to this. I never heard back, because it could just be a case of they're still getting through them, or you were just rejected and they never told you, which is bad. It's annoying when you don't hear back from a place, but it does happen a lot because they usually just get a lot of applications, a lot of applicants, and they just can't reply to everyone. And they do sting. They may knock your confidence, but you can use rejections to your advantage too. You can improve yourself with them. You can get feedback. You can just ask for some feedback. Sometimes they will say, we don't give feedback at this stage, which is annoying, but if you can ask for feedback, do it, because it's only going to help you, and it may hurt initially. Like, I know a few of my friends got rejections and they didn't want to ask for it, and I just had to kind of tell them, just do it, because whatever they say will just help you become better at your next interview, which is true. Like, they might say, oh, you didn't know enough about certain skill, so you can go, okay, I'm going to research that skill for my next interview, and then that way it'll be better. And if you get a rejection for a studio and then they open up another job application that you could apply for, unless they've said you can't apply for X months, like leave this many months between interviews, just do it. When I applied to Red Kite, I got rejected for the programmer role, and I remember at the end of it, they said, there's this other role we're were applying for as well, for a graduate technical designer. Have you considered applying for that? And I was like, I already have. I applied to both of them at the start, so I'll be hopefully seeing you in a few weeks. And they're like, yep, we'll have an interview in a few weeks. And I remember I went to that interview, and it was very case of just going, hello again, do you remember me from a few weeks? And they're like, yep, we've already basically spoken. So the interview was probably like one of the quicker ones they've done, because it was very much, when you know everything about you, you know everything about us. Is there anything else you want to know about the role? And like, they do sting into like rejections, especially if you're excited about the job or you were really looking forward to working for that company. There was one job I didn't think I was going to get, and I was super excited. I remember getting the email, and like, I couldn't believe it that I got to the I got to the interview stage when I applied. So I was like, okay, this is great. Had the online interview, and I was like, I don't know how it went. I don't think they like me. And then, surprisingly, I got to the next stage, which was a studio tour. And the studio was fantastic. It was in like, the middle of nowhere, and it was hard to get to. I wasn't sure how I'd get there if I ever did get the job, but it was a beautiful studio. And I remember going there, seeing it. I was like, yep, this is it. This is where I can see myself like working. And then I got to the tech part of the interview. There was a design like tech bit. The design things I was fine for. Like, I could answer them. But when it came to the tech portion of it, didn't really know what I was saying. They did like teach me some things that I didn't know, and I remember they were really nice with it. They're like, it's fine if you don't know this. We can teach you now, because it was more of an apprenticeship level role. And I did that, and I think there was a group of 8 of us, and they were like, yeah, we'll let you know. And so this wasn't the greatest idea. I wasn't super on board with it, but the people who went were like, well, let's make a Discord, and we can all stay in it and like chat. And then it kind of went to a thing of, there was like 6 roles going, and 8 people went for the interview. So we knew 2 of us were not going to get it. So we made this Discord, and then one person was like, oh, I got an offer. And then another person was like, I got an offer. And it kept going on until there was like 3 people left, one more job going, and we were like, okay, this is one of us who hasn't got it. This feels really awkward. And I was one of the people who didn't get it, which really hurt. And I remember leaving the Discord just like, yep, enjoy your job, guys, have fun. And I left, and I was like, that was really painful. I didn't want to do that because I knew this would happen. It would feel really awkward. And it hurt a lot, but it helped me grow as well, because it got me used to a rejection at like such a late stage in an interview process, which was great. And I got some really, really good feedback from it. I remember the programmer who I spoke to personally, he sent me a message later on saying that he was sorry about what happened, but he gave me some books to read, videos to watch, and helping me to improve my skills in case I wanted to apply like next year or for a future role they had again. But yeah, rejections hurt, but you know, with a rejection, there's also getting offers. And like I said, I applied to around 30 places, heard back from about 5, and I got 2 offers. And when you get an offer, if you get multiple, it can be really hard to work out what's right for you. Even if you just get the one, I'm not saying you should be like, yep, I've got one offer, I'm going to do it. Because you might have gotten the offer and you go, I don't really want to work for them, because you might have got an off feeling. And like I said, I was quite in a fortunate position. It was in March last year, like literally a year ago today or tomorrow, when I got my first offer. And the first offer I got was tech designer for the role I currently have, and the other one was a programming role for another company. Now, I will say, the tech design role was offered to me first. That somewhat did make me go, yeah, I'm going to just stick with that, because I remember on the phone they said, you know, if you are applying, you could stop applying now, and if you do get any other offers, you know, maybe say no, but if you do accept, just let us know as soon as you can. And it did affect it slightly, but not in a bad way. But the thing is, if I had gotten a better feeling from the programming role offer, I would have accepted it, because they gave me a better feeling, and I thought, yep, this is the place I want to work. But that's not how it worked. Red Kite just happened to give me that better. Yeah, this is a place I can see myself working. I'm going to talk about these 2 offers a little bit, and just like what my thought process was when I was deciding between them. The programming role I got offered paid a lot more than the design role, like more than I was expecting. And I remember talking to my tutors about it like the next day, saying, am I making a mistake if I don't accept it and it pays a lot more? And they were like, nope, because money's one thing. And like I said, I wasn't too bothered about money, but when you see that you're going to get paid like a salary, you do start to think, okay, can I live on this salary, or can I live on this salary if it's worth a little bit more? And at the end of the day, I think the most important thing, and it sounds really weird to say, but like, it's the feeling you get from the place. You want to make sure you're working for a place you're happy to be with. Like, you're going to be there quite a bit. It's your day-to-day job. You're going to be there a lot. You want to make sure, yeah, I'm happy to go into work each morning, and I'm happy to be with the people there. I'm happy to do the role. But like I said, programming was something I wanted to do, so why wouldn't I pick that? I mean, the role was also closer to home, which for some people might be like, yep, I can just live at home and go to the job, that's fine, save some money. for me, that didn't really impact it too much. I wanted to move out because I like moving to different cities and seeing places. But I kind of touched on it, but when I got the rejections, my confidence for doing a programming role was knocked. The programming company, when I had the interview with them, when they were talking about the tech test, they gave me a lot of reassurance of my programming skills, and I was quite, yeah, maybe I can do programming, but I was still thinking, do I really want to do this every single day and not feel super confident? Not particularly. And the design role I got offered from Red Kite, that was something I was like, yeah, I'm happy talking about design with people. I'm happy prototyping. It's one of my favorite things to do in games is just prototype mechanics. So yeah, I'm gonna definitely enjoy that more. But one of the main reasons I went for Red Kite in the end was, like I said, the feeling I got. The studio was very, everyone was super friendly and close, and it just seemed like it was, rather than we're a corporation that makes games, it's more we're friends who make games together, and that's kind of always what I wanted to be in. And the other offer was also from a studio which was fully remote at the time, which again, not something I'm interested in. I did my second year during COVID time, and it wasn't really great. I like to work with people and talk to people and just see what they're working on, share feedback face to face. Doing that over Teams or something is just not very fun for me. So that also did affect. That might be something that affects you. Maybe you want to be in a place that's remote. Maybe you want to be a place that's hybrid or fully in person. Me personally, I was like, yep, I want to be in person. I want to work in a studio, get a really good feeling for what it's like to work on a game and meet some cool people as well. And just chat games with them genuinely. And with that, working out if an offer is right for you is difficult. I can't say, yep, you should accept that offer, or no, you shouldn't, because really it depends on what you want. There's no yes or no answers to this. You just got to kind of make a pros and cons list almost and say, I want an offer which gives me this type of role, and I get to work in a studio that does what such and such. And that's all you can really do. I mean, for me, studio culture was the main thing I was interested in. I wanted to work in a place that was fun and just quite relaxed, and that's kind of what Red Kite gave me. It's also a bit of a smaller team, which is something I found nice because everything's a bit more personal. Projects is also important. You'll learn about the projects the company's making on, even if they're not announced, which, again, you'll sign an NDA for. We'll talk about that as well, because NDAs are fun. But the projects that the two companies were doing, some of them were just more interesting to me than others. So I was like, yep, that's definitely a deciding factor for me. And I wanted a job that I was going to enjoy. I've had a fair few part-time jobs where I do them for a few months or a year. I mean, McDonald's was different because I just needed the money, but I had one job where I worked in a VR arcade, and I was like, yeah, this is cool. I get to play VR games and watch people play VR games. This is great. I love this. But then after a few months, I was like, I hate this. I don't want to go to work anymore, for no reason other than I guess I felt bored, and I was always worried that was going to happen, because if I get into my dream role and then I get bored and don't want to do it anymore, what would I do? And, well, I've been at Red Kite for around 7 or 8 months now, and spoiler alert, I'm not bored, and I wake up on a Monday morning going, yeah, I'm going to make some games today. That's cool. And whenever I just think about it, I make games for a living, I'm like, yeah, that's really cool. I get to say that. I can say that with pride. I remember you get people who stop you on the street for charity work and like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, I make games. And they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. I guess it's an answer you might not get all the time. And I'm always just like, I make games. And then I walk off because I'm too young, apparently, to sign up for their charity, so I can just leave. And, I don't want to talk to them that much all the time because it's just you're trying to get home from work and they stop you. Just let me walk home. So a job that I would be excited about really was the main thing above everything, and that's what I got with Red Kite. It was an exciting job. And the process of accepting, at least in my experience, was quite easy. I got an email from a recruiter at Sumo Digital, and I was watching The Batman at the time, because it just came out. And I know you shouldn't use phones in cinemas, whatever, but we were seeing it just before 5 p.m., and I just saw the email come through on my phone saying, hey, could we set up a meeting for tomorrow? And I was like, it's basically about to be 5. I don't want to not set up a meeting, so I'm going to just slowly email them back on my phone while watching the film at the same time and be like, yep, that sounds great. I didn't have to do that because this person replied to me 8 p.m., so they obviously were working past the times they should have been as well. But so I did, and the call was set up for the next morning, and I was left waiting, and I thought this had to be good news, right? They wouldn't email me saying, can we set up a meeting tomorrow with a smiley face if it was bad news? That would be a really cruel thing to do. And I had to wait and do more waiting. And the more you wait, at least for me anyway, my mind tends to wander a bit and think about the negatives, because sometimes I'm quite pessimistic with how I go about things in life. And I thought, is this just going to be another rejection? But this is going to really hurt if she said, let's do a meeting tomorrow where we're going to not give you the job, because that's just going to feel awful. So the next day came, which was the 10th of March, came into Confetti, and I think it was the board game event that day. I went upstairs into our class. I believe, if I can remember correctly, I'm pretty sure Pete and Joe were there, and we were just kind of chatting. And Andrew was there as well, actually. We were just kind of chatting, and then the call came, and I went, and I was talking to them about it as well before the call, saying, like, this won't be bad news, will it? And they were like, if it is bad news, that's really bad. Like, they shouldn't offer to call you and just tell you, you're rejected after you got this far, congratulations. So I remember talking, and then it was like a few moments of silence, and the recruiter was like, yeah, you got the job. And I was like, oh my God. And I did say to them, like, I kind of thought you were going to reject me, And they're like, no, we wouldn't reject you over a phone call. That's really cruel. I was like, yeah, that is cruel. Like, why would you do that? And they're like, we didn't. We gave you the job. I was like, yeah, okay, that's cool. I remember I went back into the classroom, told them the good news. I remember really vividly, because it terrified me, Joe picked me up and threw me in the air, because that's just what Joe does if you've had him to teach. That's just what he does. I remember kind of Pete looking there like, is a student about to get injured now? This is going to be really bad. But no, Joe has a lot of skills. He threw me and caught me. I'm quite heavy as well, so I was looking at him like, how have you done this? Joe's a man of mysteries to me. And then that was it. There's a lot of like back and forth about, okay, we're going to introduce you to the person you'll talk to at Red Kite, sort your contract, we'll send you your contract, here are your benefits, you'll get your salary and all that. When do you want to start? That was the question I got. And they're like, do you want to start in June or July? And I was graduating in one of those months, probably June. And I remember thinking, I don't want to like finish doing uni work, graduate and go straight into a job. I want like a month off to myself to relax and play games like Elden Ring, because I bought that and I had no time to play it in uni because I was just doing work. So I was like, I'm going to play Elden Ring for a month. And I say relax, but Elden Ring, if you've played it, is the least relaxing game I think I've ever played in my life. So yeah. So I said, would you mind if I started in August instead? And like, yep, that's absolutely fine, because they knew I was a graduate at the same time. So they knew I was going to want that time to just have some time off of doing anything, which I did. And I'm really glad I did that. And then after that, I just had to do more and more waiting of going, okay, I finished. I've got a job. I can just relax now a bit. But I will say with that, carry on doing uni work. I got it in March and there was still a few months left of uni, I didn't just drop everything like, yep, see you later, I'm out of here, because I still wanted to make some cool projects. But what's next? You got the job. What do you do next? And you might be in a situation where you don't know what to do. And like I said, it's not really a reason where you could just kind of drop everything, never go back into lectures or anything again. I think I remember Yvan had this chat with me and he was like, you're still going to show up for sessions, aren't you? And I was like, yeah, obviously. I did. I went to all of them because at the same time, like, while I've got the job, I still want to make cool stuff for my portfolio, and I like making games and I can learn new skills still. So yeah, carry on doing your studies, go in, learn what you can, and it will make you better for the role. Because remember, they've hired you with the skills you currently have. If you can go into them and be like, oh yeah, those skills I had that were like level 8, I'm level 10 in all of them now. I can do this, and like that's great. They want you to be if you're as useful to them as you can be, that's going to make you look really good as well. And like personal development is a big thing. You need to finish your work, keep working on personal projects, make yourself the best version you can be for when you start working. And the thing is, like, should you apply to more jobs? Well, nothing's stopping you from doing that. There may be a new position pop up for a studio you love that you can apply to, and you could just apply, see what happens. If anything does happen and you do get offered another job you want, consider it a lot. You have kind of, if you've signed a contract, you have made a commitment to one place that you are going to work for them. You might still have time to back out and be like, I'm really sorry, I got this job, I want to do that. Make sure you tell them stuff that's happening. You want to keep them up to date with it as much as you can. You don't want to be like a day before you start, oh yeah, by the way, I'm not coming in tomorrow, I got this other job a few weeks ago, because that's just, it's not a good work manner, I guess, really. And like I said, you want to continue with your personal projects. You may want to know more about the role you're going into, because when I applied to tech design, I didn't really know what tech design was. I kind of had an idea that it would involve design. And one of the things with Red Kite, like all the different design roles they have, they all touch on different aspects of design as well. Like me being tech design doesn't just mean I do tech design, I can also do level design as well. So I thought this would be a good time to learn more about design, like being a designer in general, and asking people who are tech designers, hey, what do you do for a living? Because I don't really know what I'm going to be doing, so could you tell me, please? And getting a head start on those new skills you need is going to be super important for your onboarding process when you first start. And it'll make you look better as well, because they're hiring a graduate and they know they're going to have to train you up a lot. But if you can show them like, oh yeah, I know most of these skills that you want me to already, that's pretty good. And like a final thing I just thought would be important to talk about. if you're applying to if you're having to move to a new city, there's a lot that goes into that. So do your research, start planning, talk to your points of contact at the studio. I spoke to ours quite a bit, and they gave me a lot of advice of good places to live in Leeds, because that's where Red Kite's based. They gave me advice of where to live, where not to live, when to start looking for places. We had quite a few calls, actually, where she would just go through with me like, oh yeah, this apartment looks good, but you know, this apartment's for April and you're not starting till August, so why are you looking now? And I was just sitting there like, because I got excited and I wanted to start looking now. But yeah, when you're looking for a place to live, you can leave it a little bit until you're ready to move in, because usually you'll be like, oh yeah, you need to move in tomorrow, which again, if you've got a few months to wait, it's not really useful. The more prepared you are, like it's gonna be quite stressful if you have to move, so the more prepared you are, the better it will be. And I guess like the last thing you can do about what's next is get excited. You've done it. You've got a job in games. You're going to be making games for a living. That should be really exciting. Oh. So that's my journey into the industry done. So I thought now would be a good chance to talk about like what I actually do in the industry. And I know that was long and probably a bit boring because it's all about me. But now we're going to talk more about games and Red Kite. So I want to make sure everyone's still awake. So here's a quick refresher of just some cute animals. Get the mind refreshed. Enjoy them for a bit. Before I get on to more about Red Kite and the industry itself, we've actually got an exclusive video of Red Kite to show you, which isn't out yet, which can hopefully be on the screen. I hope. Is this okay to can you put it on the big screen? Is that okay?
Oh.
Let's just get. Hello.
Are you duplicating on your screen or are you extending your screen?
I don't know. I think it's extended. So when that comes on the screen, I'll show you this video. So here we go.
Action!
Oh, hello.
All systems go.
So that's Red Kite. Give me 1 second because I need to stop duplicating and I can't remember the keybind for that. Cool. Tech issues are great. If anyone knows the keybind for duplicating, let me know, because I can't remember for the life of me what it is. I'm pretty sure it's like, there we go. I got it. Best one I tried, obviously. So the presentation should hopefully be back now.
It's not coming up for some reason.
Is it not?
Yeah, not on my side.
I need to get that to
Why
yours.
is it coming up now?
Tech issues, that's part of game development as well, so I guess that's also a good thing to talk about. You'll get lots of tech issues like all the time. It's great.
Let's just say like to duplicate and then.
It's just because I need like the speaking notes. Sure.
Okay, one second.
Thank you.
That's all right. So if I drag it over this side, that's it. That's it.
Is it easiest just to restart it? I guess?
Okay, one sec. When you do go into slideshow, it should come up. Oh, that's on this side.
Yeah. So speaking of there. Yep.
Are you on the picture of the cats?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool, so we're back to the cute animals again. Hopefully the videos refreshed you, the animals refreshed you. So let's get on to the next bit of the talk, which is all about me in the industry and stuff, which is great fun and learning more about the industry. So there's quite a few things I learned already about being there, and I've only been there for about 7 or 8 months. And one of the things I thought I'd start with is Andy, who I mentioned before in the Career Connector, told me that I will learn more in the first few months of the industry compared to 3 years of uni, which is a weird thing to hear because you're like, I've just spent 3 years. Has that been a waste? And absolutely not. It's kind of like the same kind of thing when you're learning to drive. When you learn to drive, you learn to pass the test. But then when you start to drive, that's when you really learn what driving is all about. And that's the same thing for kind of going to university and working in games. You go to university to give you the skills to work in games, and then you work in games and you go, oh, so there's a lot more that goes on really that I need to know, a lot of different software, a lot of different practices you need to follow, and there's a lot, but it's a really fun experience. Like, you'll learn so much in your first few weeks. I don't want to say you'll be overloaded, because you won't, because it'll be really fun information you're learning, so it's really good. Like I said, you'll learn a lot of skills, and the same is for university. You'll pick up the key and technical skills you need to learn to get yourself that job and be ready to start working. But then you'll meet the people who have been there for a few years already, and they'll teach you new things you didn't know before, or they'll give you recommendations, or most of the time they'll probably tell you a game you've never heard about, and you're like, okay, I'm going to read this game, and then that becomes your new favorite game for a good few months, because that's just what happens like every day. You just kind of go, oh, have you played this game? No, and you come in another day, and they're like, oh, have you played this game instead? And you just keep learning about. There's a lot that goes into the industry and game development as a whole, and I think when you start to work, you realize like just how much there truly is, and there's a lot. Like there's a lot really, and it's quite exciting. Like everything that you'll learn, people you'll meet, you'll learn different stories, you'll hear about the games they've worked on. And if you thought there's like one way to set up one mechanic, you'll talk to a designer who's done that mechanic like 100 times. He's like, oh yeah, you can do it that way, but if you do it this way, you save yourself time and it's much quicker and it looks much better. And you go, oh, okay, yeah, there's ways to improve. Like every day you'll learn something new basically. Like one of the designers who I sit next to, like he's been here for like 3 years and I'm pretty sure he learns something new every day, and we always like share ideas, and I give him an idea he hasn't thought of, and he's given me ideas that I've never thought of, and he's just like, yeah, you can do, if you want to have like a really cool system to do this, you could just have all of this, have all these features in, and it works, and it does work, and you're like, okay, yeah, you know what you're talking about, I'm going to keep listening to you, and you can give me more information, and I'll become better. And the thing about making games is fun. Like, hopefully you'll find games fun in itself and making them fun as well. And that usually carries across in the studio you're working. You're going to be surrounded with people who want to make games for a living and they enjoy making games for a living. And it usually creates quite a positive atmosphere. I mean, you're going to be talking with them about games, making games, personal projects they're working on, because people do that. A lot of people work on their own projects while they work in games as well, because you have a passion for it, you're going to want to pursue it outside of working hours and inside of working hours. And the thing about working for a lot of people is everyone has different skills, they're specialized in different areas. I've learned quite a lot about art recently. I'm an awful artist, but I've learned about different things to do with art because I keep talking to artists or QA. It's not something I knew too much about before, but I've been talking to the QA testers quite a lot, and they teach me things. Producers who sit behind me, I get to listen and learn all the different producer secrets they're working on and just see how it all works, which is really, it's quite fun as well, like just hearing how everyone came into games in the first place. And like I said before, I'm the type of person who likes to talk about game design with people, and when you work with other people, most likely they'll be the same as you, and you get to just share that passion. I think for me, it's like even helped to just grow further because I'm hearing what people are making their own games and I'm looking at their own games like, yep, that looks incredible. How did you do this? Can I learn more about this? And it's great. And when you're there, you're going to want to get to know the people you work with because you're going to see them quite a bit. And they're all going to have different backgrounds and entries in the industry. They'll all have different stories and interests. And getting to know them, you'll make some amazing friendships. Like some of the people that I work with are some of my closest friends now just because of how much I talk to them about and how much we share in common, really. And you'll be seeing these people quite a lot, at least, and you'll be talking to them quite a lot as well over meetings, messages, and just getting to know them makes it more fun for you and more fun for them because it feels more like a friendly environment, like I said. And you're going to meet people who have been working for a very long time in the industry, and you'll probably end up talking to someone who's worked on a game you love, which will leave you a bit starstruck, or you'll find out you've been there for months, and then you just talk to them like, oh yeah, I worked on this game, and you're like, how did I not know that? Like, that's incredible. I love that game. Like, I played that game all the time, and they're like, yeah, I worked on it, and it's just fun. Working in games, that's all I can really say about games, really. It's just fun to work in. But when you're in the studio, there's a lot of opportunities to get involved, and usually it's more playing board games and stuff. Like there's a lot of groups that play D&D, which I've started to do. I've always wanted to play D&D and I never got a chance to, but now I'm in 2 campaigns. One's a Lancer campaign, which is basically D&D with mechs. So yeah, if you like Titanfall and you like D&D, just combine the two, you're in for some great nights. Board game and D&D, like I said, itself is just fun to play. I've started playing Kill Team before, like I mentioned, which is basically Warhammer 40k, but cheaper, so you don't have to be in any financial debt after it, which is great. You have like 10 models. I mean, they're still really expensive because that's Warhammer for you, but you know, there's no financial debt after it, which is great. And there's other opportunities as well. It's not all just playing games and board games. There's a lot of sporting stuff that goes on. Like, I hate football for one, like I just don't enjoy it, but I start playing football every week. I'm not good at it, but I'm getting better at it. But it's a really just fun way because no one really takes it seriously. It's just usually like a 5-a-side, and it's just a fun opportunity to just blow off some steam and just play it. I mean, I still don't really understand the rules to it, but as long as I kick the ball towards the goal or another person, I'm usually understanding that it's going the right way, and it's great. It also gets you some exercise too, which is also very good, especially when you sit most of the week in front of a computer. You will walk around a bit, obviously, but you are sitting in front of a computer. Stretch your legs. Take time away from it where you can. It's good. And the most important thing I've learned, which I keep saying I know in this talk, and it's probably really annoying now, but ask questions. Like I said, people would rather you annoy them slightly and get an answer to your question rather than just sitting there doing nothing. And I said before as well, I'm still guilty of messaging people like, hey, sorry to message, but I don't know what to do. And it's usually just a response of, don't apologize. And they said to me, don't apologize for asking questions. Communication is the key to success, or some corporate rubbish like that. And I usually say sorry to bother, and also met back with don't be sorry. I can't help but apologize. I always feel like I'm going to annoy someone, so I'm like, sorry to ask. And like, why are you saying sorry? I'm like, I don't know. I can't get over it. But you will get used to it eventually. I hope anyway. 8 months strong, and I still say sorry when I send messages. So yeah, hopefully eventually. But what is Redkite? I thought I'd talk about a bit about what the studio is itself. And Redkite is a co-development studio, which is something I didn't fully understand when I was applying and looking around. But to put it in simple terms, it basically means we work with other companies to help them work on their games. It can either be a specific part of that game, or just something with it in general, or something as such as just porting the game. But there's also work being done on our own IP. There's constantly stuff going on, and a lot of cool projects being worked on at all one time. So it's a great environment to be around, because you'll be working on one project. You could just turn around and see another project being worked on, and then you just take a few steps, and there's another project being worked on. And that's kind of like the fun part of being in a co-development studio, just seeing all these cool different projects being worked on together. Some facts about Red Kite as well. They were established in 2012 and are now a multi-award-winning studio based in central Leeds, and they've won awards for best places to work for around 4 years now. And I mean, I know I've only been there 8 months, but I can definitely say they deserve those awards, and that's not me being biased. It's just genuinely a great place to be. And the people who work tend to decide, like they vote on the award, they give it like a rating, and if that tells you anything, it means most of the people who work at Red Kite have always voted like, yep, this is a good place to work at. And in 2019, you may know of this company, they became part of Sumo Digital, which I'm sure most of you know of. I mean, there's Sumo Nottingham who are giving a few talks here this week, I believe, and most years they do. And with that whole other variety of benefits came, and the most exciting prospect of that for me was being able to work with the other studios in the Sumo bubble and see what they're working on. I mean, I've had a few meetings with the other Sumo studios just to get some advice and share ideas, which has been really fun just to meet more people making games. And lastly, what have they worked on? Some of them you probably know, and in the video you may have seen a lot. The two recent projects are Fall Guys and Hogwarts Legacy, neither of which I worked on, but I was able to see them be worked on, hear them get worked on, and even briefly, and it has been really exciting, and just hearing about like the design issues that came about when they were working on a certain project, how they overcame it, and just things, and like being able to have a designer say to me, oh yeah, I added that into like Hogwarts Legacy, and I'm like, oh, that's cool, yeah, that's a you thing. You'll see that other people play it and like appreciate it, and you go, yeah, I made that, and it's a really cool feeling. Technical designer, it's the bridge between programming and design, and yeah, it's a hard one for me to answer like what it is, and Into Games describe it as the bridge, and I'm going to just steal their definition and say, yeah, it's pretty much the bridge between programming and design. And someone described it to me when I asked using that game dev contact list. Imagine a person who builds machines in a factory and talking to the people, it's the person who builds the machines in the factory. They talk to the people who are going to be using the machines, the designers, and ask the parts manufacturer, the programmers, to make parts that you're missing. And that gave me a pretty good idea of what I'd be doing. It kind of means if a designer needs something, I might be the one who asks the programmers, hey, we need this. This is how it could work. Could you make this for us? And that is involved with being a tech designer. I kind of mentioned before, Red Kite's idea of design is quite broad, which is good because you can learn about different aspects of design. Like I've done level design personally, but I'll talk more about my day-to-day in a little bit. But asking another tech designer what they do kind of gave me a good idea of what I'd be getting myself into. And I'll be talking about this more in a few slides, the day-to-day. I'm usually in conversation with the engineers, programmers a lot, and it's me usually saying, hey, I want to make this thing, but I can't, so can you make something for it? It's a nice relationship where usually I annoy them with requests, but they secretly enjoy it because it will lead to something being more fun. And like I said, I've done a lot of different aspects of design, such as levels, gameplay, balancing, but I kind of mentioned before that I did a dissertation on AI, which helped me get my role because I work the most with AI. And it might differ in other studios, but Red Kite's idea of design where everyone kind of just does different aspects of it is really good. It's a really great way to learn different areas of it and just improve yourself as a designer. If you're working on an Unreal project, as a tech designer, it might mean you get a sort of level of trust to work on the code side of things rather than just using blueprints. And being able to understand how the code works is a great skill to have. It makes debugging easier for yourself and for the programmers you work with. Like I know the programmers I work with are grateful that I can read code and debug it, which is a really useful skill. And that's just because I've done a bit of C++ with Unreal. If I hadn't, it would be a lot more complicated to understand why something's happening, why something's going wrong. But I can just say to them, hey, this issue's happening, it's happening because of this line, I think it's because of this, and then we'll look into it together. Usually I'm wrong, but sometimes I'm right, and it's a good feeling when I can say to the programmer, your code's bad, it broke the game, can you fix it? But usually it's me that does something wrong and they have to fix it for me. But you don't have to know how to code to be a designer. It's a useful skill to have, super useful, because like I said, you can talk to programmers more, but I hardly do any code in the day-to-day, and I mainly work with blueprints, which do get a bad rep because they're slow, they're messy if you don't organize them properly. But as long as you can make them look clean and keep them well commented, you'll make everyone happy, especially yourself, because you might work on a blueprint, leave that for a few weeks or a month, and then come back and you just go, yep, this blueprint means absolutely nothing to me now. But if you left yourself comments, you'll be able to understand, oh yeah, this was doing this one thing, and you'll just be like, you'll be quite happy that you've taught yourself, yeah, I know what this is doing now, without having to like dig through a blueprint spaghetti for like hours on end going, I can't work out what any of this means. It also helps other people who might look at your blueprints too, because they have a better idea of what it's doing. So let's talk about the first few weeks. There was onboarding and meetings, a lot of meetings. I learned more about the studio, the people, the projects. There was lots of learning and lots of new skills. You'll have like the onboarding process for your first week or few weeks where when you start up, you're basically getting accounts, learning more about the benefits of the place you'll be working for, probably being a few HR meetings, which are always fun. You get a welcome to the company type of thing. You might get asked questions as well. They may ask you like tasks, like say, just before you get started on a project, here are a few onboarding tasks to get used to it and the software. And it's quite fun. It's a good opportunity to like flex your muscles. I remember our onboarding tasks were very much just like, do you want to just make some mechanics using this? And I was like using Unreal. I was like, yep, I can do that. And it was basically up to me to make what I wanted to, but I chose to base the mechanics around the projects I'll be working on. And it was a good idea because it helped me get used to that type of project as well. It's a good opportunity to meet the people you'll be working with a lot and getting to know them and the studio you've just joined. I think on my first day, I think there's somewhat a bit of a tradition where they take people out for food. So I went for like a bar burrito on my first day, and it was pretty nice just to chat with people over a burrito and get to know them, what they work on, what projects they're on. And it's a lot of fun. And talking about like projects, you'll learn more about the current project that you're going to be working on or the project being worked on the studio as a whole, which is also really cool because you can just see people are currently doing and try to pick up some knowledge from them. Plus, if you happen to be the one joining the project, the more you can learn about it, the better, and you can get started with it quicker. So when I joined, I had a few weeks before I was properly going to be joining my assigned project, and I used that opportunity to learn more about the software being used and more about development in general. One benefit you get is you get access to the GDC vault. So I used it quite a lot to listen to GDC talks whilst I worked. I wrote down notes that I thought would be useful, and I made like notes of talks that were useful, and on that, I'd highly recommend you watch Marvel's Spider-Man. There's a technical post-mortem on it. It's really good. It's like loads of good information, but like 50 minutes way through, he just shows loads of bugs from Spider-Man's early days, and I remember sitting at my desk just laughing like ridiculously loud to myself about how stupid some of these bugs were, but it's so funny. And yeah, I just recommend if you don't want to watch it, just watch like just go to the 50-minute walk, see the bugs, have a good laugh. It's always something I do every now and then if I want to just make myself giggle for a bit, because it's just like, yeah, I can see Spider-Man, because in the game, he's not meant to like kill anyone, but there's a clip where he attaches someone to a wall, and then something drives through the wall, breaks it, and that person, like, they're dead. They've just fallen from the Empire State Building all the way down, and like it's just like, yep, Spider-Man just killed someone, but no one saw that because he wasn't meant to. But it's also, like I said, good opportunity to learn. I use GDC talks as well to learn about the software, and I use the software as well. I mean, Unreal 5 had only come out properly a few months before, I think, and I'd never touched it, because I think by the time we had graduated, I think Unreal 5 was just getting introduced, or was getting introduced for the next year. So I thought I'd start playing around with it, learn about it. And Unreal 5 is beautiful. I love it compared to 4, because it's got really nice UI, and it's hard to go back and forth between them now. I don't like to. But I also looked into other software, which I thought would be good skills to know or useful. And one of the software I looked into was Houdini, which is, no pun intended with this, it's magical. Like, it's super useful software. You can do a lot with it. Marvel's Spider-Man, like the Manhattan in it, was all made through Houdini, which still amazes me how they used it. Like, the talk for it is fantastic. It's basically they just took like a map of Manhattan and they said, okay, we want road networks. And Houdini was like, yep, I'll do that for you. And here's all the road networks. And you went, oh, you want buildings between these road networks? Yep, we can do that for you as well. Houdini is amazing. If you have an opportunity to learn about it, learn about it. It's super useful. It's also a really sought after skill because there's not too many people who know a lot about it, and you can do so much with it. So I thought I'd talk about like what I'm working on personally. Or not. Yeah, I wish I could tell you that I'm working on because it's really cool, but you're going to do this as soon as you go for an interview, that you're going to have to sign an NDA, and you can't talk about the project outside the studio or unless other people have signed the same NDA. Yeah, it's fun, and I'm not in the interest of losing my job because that'd be a really interesting industry week talk. Like someone's like talking and they lose their job halfway through. I think that'd be like a record or something. That'd be quite cool. But I'll be talking about the day-to-day carefully, and after the supervision of people who've looked into my talk and made sure I've not said anything that's going to like reveal all the secret projects going on. So I'll try my best, but it's all going to be very general day-to-day stuff, rather than just, I work on this project, it's cool because of this. So day to day, lots of meetings, so many meetings. You'll have meetings most days, maybe not in your first few weeks or months, but there'll come a time where your calendar is full. I went from having like a month of no meetings, kind of just going, seeing other people at meetings, going, oh, I want to be in a meeting, that looks like fun. And now I have a meeting like every day, most of the day. It's fun, I like meetings, and it can be quite tiring because you're in a call and you can't really do work at the same time. Sometimes you can, depending on the meeting, but you have to like stay focused. You might have your camera on, and if you haven't slept very well, you kind of just realize you're slowly drifting off, and you have to kind of like wake yourself up and realize, what do I look like in the camera right now? Who's looking at me? What kind of face am I making? There's a lot you have to be aware of when you're doing a meeting, but they're all quite fun. It's still quite new to me, and I always find them quite exciting. And one thing you'll get used to, you may have done it in a group project, is you'll have like a scrum. You'll have a start of the week meeting where you talk about, this is what we're doing this week, or this like development cycle, here's how I'm gonna do it, here's any issues I'll have with it. I find scrums exciting and I enjoy them. I was talking to a senior programmer the other day, and he hates scrums, hates them a lot, and I went to him, did you enjoy them when you first started? He was like, oh yeah, I loved them when I first started. So the appreciation for meetings and scrums, I believe, is kind of like it's like a graph. Like the longer you've been working, the less you'll appreciate and just want to carry on with work, which is quite funny because it's like I'm like thinking to myself, I won't be like that. I'm gonna always love them. I can definitely see a point where I'll be like, yeah, no, I don't want to go to a 15-minute scrum where I could just carry on doing work. But maybe not. Maybe I will actually just generally keep enjoying them. And meetings might also involve like daily stand-ups where you just say to someone, I'm working on this today. I need help from this person because I don't know what I'm doing. And the weekly scrum, like I said, stand up, talk about what you're working on, any issues or concerns, or you just say, I need support for this, or just anything like that, really, if you just need some help on your tasks. If you work with other studios, like a co-development studio does, you might be working in a situation where you have meetings with time zones that don't connect up, and that can happen a lot. There's a balance where you don't join a meeting that's at like 9 p.m. your time because it's 9 p.m. You don't need to join that, but there might be some times where you have to stay slightly a bit later just because it's an important meeting and you need to talk to them, and it's 9 a.m. for them. So it kind of there's a balance to it, and usually the other company you work with are quite, they understand that your time zone is very different to them. They could be like 8 hours behind, and they wake up, you're getting ready to finish, and there's usually a balance, but it works out quite well. And you won't be expected to join a meeting that's, say, 9 p.m. for you and 3 p.m. for the studio. If you had to join a meeting that late, there would have to be a very good reason, but genuinely no one would ever really expect you to join that because it's 9 p.m., you can go home and go to sleep, have some food, just relax, you've been in work all day. And meetings with people in different time zones is really quite fun because it's a mixing of cultures, and you get to meet different people and get to like learn more about where they live. We have a meeting called a cafe, which is where no work's discussed. Like, we're not allowed to discuss work. We've been told off for discussing work in it. We just have to chat about things going on. We talk about Elden Ring quite a lot. We talk about shows we're watching, games we're playing. We just talk about other games and just nothing to do with the game. I got asked once because what iconic foods from the UK are, and I kind of stared blankly and went, do we have any iconic foods? I went, I guess beans on toast is quite iconic for the UK. And they kind of looked at me like, oh, okay, anyway, moving on. I mean, I guess we have roast dinners and stuff, but like, well, we don't really have that many exciting foods that aren't beige, so I had to just kind of be like, yep, the UK's got beans on toast or cheesy beans on toast if you're feeling special that day. And like I said, you meet more people. I was speaking to someone who was working on a game, and a lot of my friends loved that game, so I couldn't tell them, obviously, that I worked with someone on it, but I was like, whenever they talk about it, I'm just like, oh, you like that game, do you? I was like, okay, that's cool. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm working with the person who was lead on that game, and you'll never know until sometime in the future. But to me, it was like a real starstruck moment because I was like, you're a big name and I'm working with you? That's super cool. And like I said, I can't talk too much about what I actually do because, like I said, I don't want to lose my job and create a new thing for industry where people try and lose their jobs mid-talk because that'd be weird. But I can talk about some of the bits I do in a more general sense. So I've said before, I work with AI and combat AI. And it primarily involves me working with behavior trees and adding new behaviors to them, looking for bugs, which when you're working with AI, there's lots of them, and you don't always know why they're doing them. They don't always do the same bug because they're just kind of going about their day and they just kind of decide all of a sudden, I'm not going to do the thing that I've been told to do because why do I need to obey your laws? I'm AI. I can do what I want. There's a lot of tweaking and observing that happens with AI. You have to make sure they perform the appropriate behaviors at the right time. It can be quite a headache. Patience and being able to understand what they're doing is a big thing of it. And I also work with a lot of the programmers who help me with it as well. We're part of like a pod or a small team of AI for this project, and just a lot of back and forth to make sure the AI do what we want them to do and don't do what we don't want them to do. And I think going back on like how uni can help you get your job, I think doing the dissertation did help me get this job in it, like working closely with AI, because they did mention it. I didn't know at the time of my interview that's what I'd be doing, but when I found out, it kind of clicked like, oh, I did a dissertation all about AI. That might be why I'm working on AI. And that's another reason to make sure, like, when you're working on projects, they're kind of applicable to like what you want to do. If you make a mechanic like based project all about doing like time controlling games and stuff like that, you might be able to work on a project that does that because they know, oh, this person knows what they're doing with this. We're going to give them a role in that. And there's other things that you'll do as well a lot. Documenting is one of them. I love documentation. I like to make lists and keep organized because it just means I have like a easier way of working. So doing documentation is something I've had a lot of fun with, and I get to document features and mechanics. And when doing documentation, you want to make sure all the information you're writing is always kept up to date, so that way you don't have like a thing like a few months later when you go, does this still work as we documented it? I don't know. It's a few months out of date. We'll have to play and waste time figuring out. If you keep the documentation up to date, everyone will be happy. Keep it as concise as possible, so that way when people read it, they know what they're looking at. And try to include contact information on it if you can. Like if it's a whole system and there's people who own it for animation or programming, put their contact info on it so you don't get a lot of questions for you going, hey, I've got a programming issue of this. Who do I talk to? You can just say documentation, read it. And getting detail across is something you'll learn as you continue to work and do more documentation. When I started the role, something I learned about more was one-page designs, which is this kind of thing here. And this was created by Stone Librandi for Diablo 3, and it shows the fire chain ability. It's all on one page. I'm not sure how well you can see it, but it's put in a way that's pretty easy to understand and clear. And Stone used this method because he said, and he's quite rightly so with this, if you hand someone a 40-page GDD, they're not going to want to read it. They're going to look at it and go, I'm not reading all this. They might skim through it, but then they'll still ask you questions because they haven't fully understood what they're reading. So if you can break all of that information down into one page with lots of visuals and clear explanations of what's going on, you'll be in a really good position to just give it to like an engineer, for example, and say, hey, this is a new mechanic we're making. Here's a one page on it. Go nuts. And they'll look at it and go, yep, if you've done it right and well, they'll be able to say, yep, this one page makes sense. You've pretty much just given me like an instruction sheet. Like if you think about Lego, the instructions for it have like no text. It's just literally put Lego on Lego. And you can follow that and understand it quite well most of the time. That's a one page. That's a one page for you right there. I mean, it is hard to get things from one page, and I think Stone's advice was use a bigger page if you have to, but just don't give someone something that's like thousands of pages long, because when you have to update it, you're going to have to read through those thousands of pages, where if you have one page, you can just update a single page. And I remember when I was using it, one of the programmers said to me they liked it because it was concise, easy to understand. And that made my day, because I was like, yay, I did it and it worked. And he was just like, yep, this makes perfect sense to me. I know what this has to do. It felt really good. Like it was a really good feeling for me. And I'll have some recommendations at the end of the talk, but I'll say now, if anyone's interested in game design, read up on one-page designs, watch Stone's GDC talks on them. They're super insightful. He's worked on like a load of games, like the Simpsons games, Spore games, and the Spore one-page design. It started off as like a mess, but then it just slowly condenses to basically circles with colors that's saying if these two colors interact, it makes a new color, which is representative of a new personality trait. It's really useful. Part of the day-to-day is Jira. Jira is great. If you've never used it, it's basically something like Trello or Kanban software where basically all your tasks are there and organized. You have to update it. It's a cool tool. Producers love it. Most people hate it. I don't mind it because I like to keep organized and have lists, but if your studio uses it, it's basically the software which holds all your tasks for that sprint or that cycle and tells you how much time you've got left in that sprint. It's where you can make updates about tasks, say if you're blocked by another task, and how long a task will take you. Again, I like organization. I enjoy Jira, which some people at studio will probably roll their eyes at me about, which they have done to my face because I say I like it to them, and they're just like, that's disgusting. How dare you like this software? And I'm like, it's fine. But producers will probably be quite happy to know that I enjoy Jira, because they're pretty much the only ones who usually do. And I just thought I'd briefly touch on version control software. This is something that I imagine most games everywhere use, and if they don't, that's risky. Because if you have version control, it just basically means you always have a copy of your work somewhere. So if you like have all your work on your laptop and your laptop breaks, that's all your work gone. But if you have version control, you can just log into get another laptop, work somewhere else, log into your version control software of choice, and your work's still there from the last time you updated. So use version control a lot, keep updating it, like all the time. Pushing increments to it is basically the best thing. Like if you make a small change, push it. If you make try not to do a big change, because if you need to revert to a change, and you'll be reverting so much work if it's one big change. Where if it's just one small work, like one small changes at a time, you can go, okay, this small one didn't work, so let's just go to the one before it, and you don't lose that much work. Version control is great, and if you haven't learned it, learn it. It's a good thing you can put on your CV as well. But like a lot of the things I mentioned here are actually really good technical skills to throw in your CV. If you can tell people you know how to document, you know about one-page design, you know about Kanban software like Jira, you're going to be into a better starting position than most people because you know these skills, which will help you and it will help the studio as well. So I've talked about tech design. I've talked about time. I didn't realize the time. Apparently I talked for a bit too long. There's other roles in games. There's QA, there's producers, there's office managers, marketing, which they're all super important. I wish I had more time to talk about it. I can share the talk, hopefully at some point, which will be good. There's a lot that goes into making games. Just read up about different roles, because there might be a role that's right for you and not for other people. Here's a list of recommendations. Check them all out. I can share them all with you. And yeah, thank you all for listening. I didn't realize I went over. I thought I was going to go way under, so that's really good. And yeah, feel free to message me on everything, because we probably don't have time for questions, I imagine. Maybe we do. We might have time for questions. If we have any questions, yeah, let me know.
Yeah, we got a couple of minutes for some questions.
Okay, sorry about running over.
Do you have any questions?
Yes.
Yes, hang on. Let me come to you.
Have you ever released your games on Steam?
Not on Steam, but my current project I'm working on, that Wizard one, will hopefully be on Steam at some point. I just need to keep working on it. Itch.io, though, great software, great place to put all your personal projects on. So yes, soon, I hope.
Any more questions, guys? Yeah.
Do you have any advice for someone that is self-learning on Real Engine?
Yeah, so if you're self-learning, I mean, if you're using tutorials, you can look at Udemy to learn a lot of great stuff from there. Look for videos, like using videos is perfectly fine, or using written documentation, using written tutorials as well. But I guess look for a specific area of Unreal. If you want to learn everything, just look for like a complete beginner's course to Unreal on Udemy. There's loads if you haven't used them already. They're usually on sale like all the time. For like you can get one for £130. Is now £9 because they just do sales like that. So use tutorials as much as you can. Take it slow. There's a lot to Unreal. It's a behemoth software, but if you take it slow and do it each step at a time, you'll be able to learn it really well. It's quite beginner friendly as well, especially with Blueprint. Hopefully that's useful.
Anybody got any more questions?
Just a couple more final things to say before we finish. There's 2 more talks for games today. Rhiannon Murphy is at 2, and Aaron Everett is at 4, both in P2. Just want to give one more thank you just to Saul for the talk and get a round of applause for him. Well, I hope you're having a good industry week so far, and I hope you enjoy the rest of today and tomorrow.